Well, this young Willy Wonka is different than the Willy Wonka from both prior versions that I love. But those versions of Willy Wonka are the Willy we know from the Roald Dahl books, where he's had decades of success. He's a little fried. The synapses in his brains are a little twisted, and he's giving away his factory for one reason or another. This Willy Wonka is the story of the beginning of Willy Wonka and the ambitious young chocolatier who hasn't made it yet, who's full of ambition, full of joy, full of a hat full of dreams, but isn't quite where he wants to be yet. I got approached to do Wonka, sometime in 2021, and immediately was so charmed by the script. The lyrics for Hat Full of Dreams were written out without the music, but I just was like so charmed and instantly got a sense of the character whose money's dwindling, but like refuses to see the world as anything less than full of possibilities, and I just saw the take. I saw the how this was different than the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory versions of Willy Wonka, and I thought it was clever, and I was charmed by that. There are many moving parts on a Paul King movie, but it's also a very joyful ride, and full of laughs and a sense of play that, in the style of self-serious filmmaking that's more fashionable now. Maybe it's not as present on other. This is really a fun set, and he's got a wicked sense of humor. Working across Hugh Grant, Olivia Colman, and Rowan Atkinson was like seeing like the British all-stars on set every day. Let alone Keegan-Michael Key, who's hilarious, somebody whose sketches I grew up on, Matt Lucas, Matt Baton, these are all, Patterson Joseph, these are all wonderful British actors. So yeah, it sort of felt like stepping into like a Sunday roast or something as the ignorant Yankee from across the seas, across the pond. There was more training that went into this than maybe anything I'd ever worked on, because there's an element of song and dance that you have to spend months prepping. Obviously for the songs you gotta record them, pre-record them. And for the dance numbers, I've talked about it before, but I was really humbled by, it's not simply about raw expression. You really gotta stay in the center of frame on some shots. Some shots you might be killing it, but another dancer might have messed up. All sorts of variables that you wouldn't really consider in a A-B talking scene, So it was more challenging, but ultimately more rewarding than maybe something more traditional. The message of Wonka is to never give up on your dreams, and it's meant sincerely and heartfelt. It's not some tired Hollywood idea that we're trying to sell you, and it's got nothing to do with me. It's got everything to do with Paul King, the writer-director, who's come up with a very clever origin story for Willy Wonka. Unexpected. And at least from my perspective, really came through on its promise to, create something that makes you want to dream and makes you, whether you're a kid or an adult, get in touch with your inner child and remember, what the things are that make you who you are to begin with, which we, as we get older, kind of lose sight of.
We were always in contact vaguely since Paddington 2, and then I think he just emailed me one day and said he was doing this, and then he explained how much he loved the Oompa Loompas in those early films, particularly for being so unpleasant. And he said, whenever I think of someone really curmudgeonly and unpleasant, I immediately think of you. And so that was his pitch. I did watch the earlier films, and then I thought, how do we make this different? But I definitely thought the key was to keep the sort of curmudgeonly element of the envelope. This is my speciality. Well, I do love to sing these days and dance in every film. And so I relished that prospect. And we worked on various things, and you know, looked a lot at that original Gene Wilder film and the Oompa Loompas, what they were up to there. And the song I sing is one of those songs. And then I work absurdly with a choreographer. And it's really not very much dancing. It didn't deserve that. But anyway, yeah, I love to dance. Because most of my work was motion capture, I didn't really have much interaction with Timothy, except one day when, as an experiment, we tried doing motion capture in a tent to the side of the set while he was actually acting. And I did meet him that day, and I liked him a lot. He was great and funny. Paul King's very good at moving people. I mean, the number of people who've told me that they cry at the end of Paddington 2. I know I cry at the end of Paddington 2. And there's a lot in this film which is very moving, and it's sort of Dickensian in a way, and really grabs your heartstrings. And then it should be a visual feast. A wonderful director of photography, production design, music, dancing. I can't see how it can't be a hit.
I think there were various reasons I wanted to be involved. So I wanted to work with Paul King, and I loved the Paddingtons that he and Simon Farnaby did, and David Heyman and everybody. Wonka, I loved. The Gene Wilder Wonka for me was my sort of magical every year kids film, and I wanted to be in something that my youngest would really enjoy. In fact, not just youngest, all of them. You know, it's a proper, sumptuous, I wanted to be in it, and I love playing a baddie. I just loved it, proper Dahl-esque, you know, old school baddies, and the pair of them, you know, Tom Davis and me together, Scrubbit and Bleacher. Just really fun, joyful to play. They are horrible, but they also find love, you know. Maybe there's I don't know, potentially a future where they're not so nasty. But it's really fun to have the teeth and the hair and the costumes and being cruel to small people. He's a proper actor's director. He's really collaborative, and he likes what you can bring to it as well. And he'll shout at. It's like being part of a sort of theatrical troupe in a way. He wants to know what do you think about that? Yeah, we could try that. Yeah. So it's all sort of collaborative, as I've said, and he's really fun. He giggles a lot. So when you're trying something out, and the person laughing the most is the one who's not meant to, who's behind the monitor, just a lovely, friendly. Make sure you feel confident and safe, and exactly what you want from a director. So unfortunately, in my sets, there wasn't any chocolate in the laundry. But we went to visit some of the other sets. And oh my God, they're amazing. They're probably not real. I went, no, they're all real. This incredible chocolatier, she wanted to make sure that it was, I think they probably said you only need to do a few hero chocolates. She went, no, it must all taste good. And she made these incredible, and sure enough, she's right. I tried something that was beautiful, and it was a salted caramel, and there were, you know, I don't know how she did it.
Well, about my character Noodle is, she's an orphan, and she stays down in this wash house where she's, you know, not really loved, and she has to work all the time, and it's just, you know, it's hard for her, and she doesn't really have a family. So when Willie comes around, she's like, oh, maybe I could have a friend. So she decides to help him, and he just takes her along his journey to become a chocolatier. What I think she thinks is that he's just like a weird person because, you know, he doesn't know how to read, and so she's probably like, oh, okay. But yeah, I feel like she's just like, well, this guy came down here just like all the other scrub house workers, and he doesn't know how to read, he doesn't know how to do this, and now he has to pay 10,000 sovereigns. And so she's just like, well, you stuck down here with the rest of us. I think they're trying to accomplish definitely Willy Wonka's dream. That's basically in the movie what he's trying to accomplish. He's trying to become a chocolatier. And so he just wants, I mean, he will do anything to become a chocolatier. Like, he's working for the scrub house workers and trying to become a chocolatier at the same time. And so he definitely needed help with that. So that's when Noodle, you know, steps in and helps him along the way. He is just a great guy. I mean, like, we had so much fun on set. We used to give each other high fives all the time, and we had like jokes that we would tell each other, and it was just super fun. We would dance. He's really great. He loves to make like heartfelt films. That's what I really like about him. he's like he's a kind person, and he believes in his actors, and he likes to go back and forth with his actors and say, okay, well, if you don't want to do this, then let's do this. Or like, he's open to anything. She's just so sweet. I mean, like, that's just like, she's a sweet person. Like, just genuinely, she's just sweet. She just loves people, and she's just so great. I mean, like, she just I can't even explain. She's just so sweet. And she was showing me pictures of like her dog and her kids. It was super fun. We did wire training where I had to go up in the air, back down, and I actually thought I was gonna be really scared of that, but I actually wasn't. I went like 30 feet, and then Timmy went like 60 feet. And I was like, well, okay, I got 30 feet. But yeah, did wire training, and then we did flying in this like blue screen. And then there was one time where we flew actually all the way in the air, and then we came down and we started dancing. At first, it was a little scary because, it was my first time going that high in the air except in an airplane, but I got through it, and it was really fun after that. I did a lot of practicing before we even started filming, and to be honest, it was a little hard at first because it was my first time doing anything like this big and having to sing and all of that, and so it was a little hard at first, but once I got the hang of it, I tried my best and I got through it, and yeah.
My character, the chief of police, is in cahoots with the chocolate cartel that runs the town that Willy Wonka finds himself in. And he wants to stake his claim, but the chief of police is the man who kind of does all of the dirty work for the chocolate cartel. He's the one that when they want to run somebody out of town, it ends up being his job and his responsibility to do that. So when Willie gets to town, he's asked, the cartel asks the chief to really get rid of him as fast as they can. And he has some moral quandaries with it, but it works out to their advantage instead of his. When I first read the script for Wonka, I felt this really wonderful, uplifting, heartfelt story that it would be so great to see on screen. And I could see the picture. And I really was like hoping that I could be a part of it. And I really was looking forward to being a part of it. Working with Paul King was such an honor. He's such a collaborative director. He's also very, very good at knowing exactly what everything's going to look like on camera. So when you work with him, he gives you what you need as an actor, but he's always out to make the film and you look the best you possibly can. And that was really, really wonderful. And I think when you think of Paul's past work, the Paddington movies, there's a magical quality to those films that is absolutely needed in Wonka. There is this wonderful imagination explosion that happens because it's like things that we can imagine only in our lives, he makes real. And that's something that's right up Paul's alley. Working with Timothée Chalamet was an absolute dream. It was really wonderful. He helps you get in character because he's so in character playing Willie. His movements and the way that he speaks and moves and everything, it was just really, really wonderful. I loved working with him, and he's a generous actor. Very generous actor. Lindy Hemmings, who is our costume designer, was amazing, absolutely amazing in regard to wanting to put little fun comedic moments in the piece. In fact, as my character expands, if you will, there's something that I think people might notice is that he has a belt that he wears, and the belt expands and expands until you see that the belt has to have extra holes put in it. And then he's so big at one point in time that the belt is on the last possible hole. And Lindy, to think up things like that, that was all Lindy. And it was just really fantastic for her. And she had to design four separate police uniforms for this particular character. But the police uniforms are so kind of wonderfully magical in their own way. It's like different eras of police uniforms mixed into one. And she does that with everybody across the board. And it's really great. Patterson and the Matts were an absolute delight to work with. They were professional, but always we had so much fun on set. both on camera and off camera. Sometimes, depending on a project, you might find yourself in a place where you have a lot of fun off camera, and then on camera it can be, whatever. But with this case, every bit of joy just led onto the lens, and it was so fun working with them. It was hard to keep straight faces. Something that moviegoers can really look forward to with this film is this uplifting feeling that we desperately need, I think, right now in our world. And the music is absolutely fantastic. Neil Hannon's music is amazing in this film, and I think people are gonna walk out of the cinema humming the songs. And I think that you want to experience this at the cinema. It's such a big piece. There's something very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like voluminous about it, and it deserves its due, and its due is on the big screen.
Well, I grew up loving Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like many people my age, I sort of had this early paperback with the Quentin Blake illustrations, and I read it from cover to cover. So often the pages fell out of the spine, and it was always a really special story and a special character for me. And when David Heyman, the producer, mentioned the idea of doing Young Wonka, I was immediately intrigued. And I went back and read the book again, and I'd remembered Willy Wonka and the Oompa Loompas and the kind of crazy, colourful chocolate factory. But what I'd forgotten about the book was how incredibly moving and emotional it is as well. And Charlie's this poor, long-suffering character, and you're really rooting for him. And at the end, when he inherits the factory, I found myself in floods of tears. And I thought, that's what's so great about this book, is it's funny and it's colourful and it's chaotic, but it's also got this really strong emotional spine. And I thought, it's such a wonderful world. It's sort of everything I've always loved about stories. It's everything I tried to do in the Paddington films, and the chance of being able to dip my toe into that world was too enticing for words. We wanted to make a film that would stand as a companion piece to the book and the 1971 movie, and not sort of have anything that would disrupt your enjoyment of those pieces. And we were interested in telling the story of Willy Wonka before he was famous and before he had the chocolate factory, when he was a sort of young man, first going out into the world and hoping to find a place which rewarded talent and hard work, and is startled and disappointed to discover the world is a tougher place than he first imagined. Timothée Chalamet is an extraordinary talent. I first came across him in Call Me By Your Name, and I was blown away by his performance in that. And then the same year I saw him in Lady Bird, where he was completely different and wildly funny, and I just knew from that moment he was an incredibly special talent. What Timothy does so brilliantly is he is able to sort of access the depths of human emotion and express them, while at the same time being very funny and very charming and incredibly precise, because we have huge song and dance sequences in this that required great precision and choreography, and he's able to seemingly keep all these plates spinning at once. It's a marvel to behold. The Oompa Loompas don't have much dialogue in the books or either of the films, and so I went back to the book. What they do have in the book are these very, very long songs, and they're very funny, but they're written as poems by Roald Dahl, but it's supposed to be the Oompa Loompas singing, and they're sort of pages long, and I was reading these, and they're so biting and sarcastic, and the Oompa Loompas seem to take this sort of gleeful pleasure in the demise of all the ghastly children touring the factory, and I just found Hugh's voice coming into my head. I've been lucky enough to work with him on Paddington 2, and once I had his voice in my head with an Oompa Loompa, it wasn't such a huge leap to imagine him 18 inches high with orange skin and bright green hair. And once that image is in your head, you've got to find some way of getting it out. So my way was to make it a reality. In this story, Willy Wonka has a young girl who he befriends called Noodle, and Willy's a very sort of childlike character. He's got an infectious enthusiasm for everything, a sort of recklessness, and a sense that everything will vaguely come out in the wash. He's a very sort of hopeful soul. Noodle is an old head on young shoulders, and she's grown up in this city, and she knows that she's sort of very much been to the school of hard knocks, and she knows that it's a tough place where everyone's out for themselves. So they're going to work work together, and they will rub off on each other as the movie goes on. So Willie will give her a sense of hope and optimism in the future, and she will give him a dash of cynicism and reality, which helps turn him into the Willy Wonka we all know and love. Kayla is a wonderful talent. We auditioned literally thousands of young actors to find her, and it was a proper global search to find her, and I think she brings an absolute warmth and integrity and humour to the character, and she's just extraordinary.
It was so much fun going for my first ever fitting, and I just kind of wanted Mrs. Scrubbit to be a bigger person than me, just sort of the idea of shaping her a little bit more. And I really enjoyed having the great big bottom and great big bosoms, and she was sort of gorgeous, and she really enjoyed her body, and that was quite fun to play. The sets, Nathan Crowley's sets you feel like you're walking into, when I've been lucky enough to go to Disney, and it feels a bit like you're going into an adventure playground. It's so huge. The big square is really that size, and the shop fronts and the chocolates were real. Everything was real. And also in the wash house, every drawer I opened had paper that was stamped with scrub it and bleacher. And I just can't imagine how he does that. He sees clearly an empty warehouse and creates magical lands. He's a genius, and it was a joy to go and look at everything. There's certain sort of homages, little moments during this. You can hear a trill of music, which takes me back to the Gene Wilder one. It ties everything in so beautifully, and it goes back to an era of grand filmmaking. And the tricks and the flights and things are all in camera, they're not post. And big musical scenes, musical numbers with tunes that I'm still hearing in my head. And I can imagine schools around the country the year after this film comes out doing this and singing these songs at school. He's done such a beautiful job, and he's made a masterpiece, I think. They've honoured the world of Dahl so beautifully. It's a proper legacy film, and I've just seen the finished product, and it really is. It's something that kids will enjoy for generations.
I love the sets. The sets are absolutely beautiful. Every set is just its own character. And my favorite set, I'd say, is the Wonka chocolate shop. I love it. It's like when you walk in, it's just like, whoa, you see everything. It's just like a big, bright sun. So it's crazy. When you see it and you see all the flowers and river, and it's just really cool to me. He definitely showed me what I can do, and I really appreciate that. I've never done anything like this before, but being able to work with Paul, he definitely showed me how to be me.
From the very moment he showed up, he's an extraordinary talent, and he embodies Wonka in the most incredible way, and grew with the character throughout the shoot. And he can dance and he can sing, and he's a really top person as well. So it was an absolute pleasure, having him in the film. And he's so professional and dedicated to making it right. And I think he and Paul had an incredible relationship on set. And Timmy would always watch every take back. They'd make notes together. He'd always want to do another one to make it better. So. Absolutely invested. And I think the way that he can show emotion in a really subtle way on screen, and flip between being funny and then pathos, is so sophisticated. The performance is so sophisticated that I think that surprised me, and how he can go through 10 takes, and that nuance of performance is just, something to watch. He's an incredible artist and innovator, but he also just cares so much about the material and the film and the filmmakers with him. And he's just got such a specific vision that he just manages somehow to manipulate the world into what he's seeing, and it's so precise on every level, on every layer, and he's involved in all of it. whether it's the music or the art department or the performances, or he's the whole thing. So he's a real auteur director, I'd say. And that's what a producer wants out of a director is to have that vision. And then obviously it's our job to help him try to bring that to life. The whole movie feels really joyful, like from its colour, from its movement, and I think that's what we all need. You know, we really need this film because it makes you smile. We were smiling on set a lot when we were doing those musical numbers, and yeah, this is really something.
We first started the film trying to work out the geography of the town, and Nathan was trying to piece together the locations and the sets, and he started creating models, and then I was invited in to start looking at how the environment was going to work, particularly the town square, because the town square itself is it's quite a large set. It's a very, very large set, and it's built composite with the Palais Gourmet, and it was one of the first sets which we had to shoot on. So we had this enormous team who was actually behind us, actually getting us through it to make it work. The town is stuck in the past, and it's controlled, and it's made exclusive, and chocolate isn't available to absolutely everybody, and it's not looking into the future. And Willie arrives and into this fusty world, and he's bringing colour and light and chocolate for everybody. And when you get to the interior of his shop that he's actually created, I was really struck, and I was really overwhelmed by the sentiment that Paul wrote in the few lines which actually describes the interior of the shop. And one of them was that it was an enchanted garden. The hardest thing about that shop, it was at the very, very start of the film, and I spoke at length with Jamie and Nathan and Paul about this, is that when you enter the shop and it's this incredible enchanted garden, how are we going to represent all that in chocolate? How do we make our set dressing look as though that it's edible? And we had a very, very simple rule. If you were to look at it and it doesn't look like you can't eat it, then it's wrong.
Gosh, this is probably one of the most magical experiences in my career/life, and it's just, to be able to design and make the chocolates for such a story in a film. This is the most creative, quirky, most extraordinary chocolatier in the entire world. So yeah, for me to have this job of creating these chocolates is just a dream come true and such an honor.
When I was approached about possibly getting involved in some form of adaptation of the Willy Wonka story, I leapt the opportunity. I mean, what a thrill and what a privilege. Wonka is a wonderful character. We have our own iconic actor playing Willy, Timothee Chalamet. He is amazing. Here we are on day 70, and every day he brings something new to the table. He, like Willy, is an artist, is passionate. He, like Willy, is mischievous with a twinkle in his eye. He is soulful and beautiful, bringing him to life in the most vivid and magical way. I cannot think of anyone else today who could play Willy and bring him to life the way that Timmy has. It is incredibly exciting, and I am confident that audiences the world over, from 9 to 109, will fall in love with him and his portrayal of Willy Wonka. We needed to find someone who had the imagination and enjoyed Dahl as much as we did, as the fans do. And so I approached Paul King. Paul, I'd had success working on the two Paddington films. And what I loved about Paul and his approach to Paddington was his ability to capture the voice of Michael Bond and make it accessible for both adults and children, imbue it with a rich thematic underpinning, and bring an incredible imagination to play. That felt like real ingredients that we wanted to bring to Wonka. We wanted heart, we wanted humor, we wanted someone who could capture the spirit of Dahl, and someone who would give the story a rich thematic element. I think it's a classic. I think Paul King is making a classic, a film that will be enjoyed for generations to come.
When he contacted me about this, I was like ecstatic, because I'll tell you why, because somehow I've done Paddington 1 and 2 with him. I feel, he might say otherwise, but I feel we have a fantastic instinctive sort of, a rapport. And also because you can really talk to him and you can have an argument with him and you can be silly and he doesn't mind. He can take all of it, and he can give it back and you don't feel like you're falling out. And I think that's it's just fantastic to be able to have a working relationship with somebody where you can go through all that, And if you're a costume designer, there's just really the most important thing is that you're in tune with the director, and then when you read the script, you can see the characters. You might have an argument about what they are, or you might misunderstand what they are. You might have your take, but the thing is, that's a conversation, something of yours and something of theirs and something of this, it'll all go in. That'll be much more interesting. We didn't have Olivia until right at the end, and everything that Olivia wears now has been made. Her aprons have all been printed and made. Her cardigans and knitwear have all been knitted, and her dresses have all been printed. Everything's been printed by Michael and made. So it's like part of it, after you've started doing that, it becomes like you have to do everything, That's so even things like her beautiful old overalls that she wears have been, they've been dyed in a certain way, and then they've had a sort of treatment where the dye is pushed out, and then other things are actually printed on them. So it might look like they're just a load of old clothes, but actually we know that they've all got a story to them. The fundamental thing about Willy Wonka and his whole costume is that by the time you meet him at the beginning of the film, he's been wandering the world in some of these clothes. He's owned all of those clothes, and he's been wandering the world, sometimes to hot countries where he wouldn't be wearing his velvet coat, and then other times to colder places where he would, and more. We didn't use the red velvet coat to start with because the ship is landing that he's been on for all this time. And so we just you saw him on the ship with the underneath parts. And then the putting on of the layers became part of him leaving the ship and going to the shore. And so the first thing, apart from the hat, which we can get to in a minute, but the first thing that you see that would be really Gene Wilder's Wonka world is when he goes into town, he puts on the red velvet coat. I mean, every piece of the chocolatiers' tailored wools, for their suits, had to be dyed to a specific colour because Paul wanted them to be one green, one blue, and one yellow. That was their chocolate shop colour, that was their chocolate wrappers colour, and that was their colours of their clothes, everything they had. So it was, once that started, I think it was like a moment that we knew the key, and it was going to be colourful, and it was going to be more like a musical and less like a regular sort of story, more like a musical. And that the characters could be broad.
The details, every detail of every moustache, of every eyebrow, of every single head of hair, everything was carefully designed and chosen to be the right colour for the costume, to be the right volume, to be the right, all the main characters have jobs in this story, so they also have to represent the job title they represent, and that was so much fun. Wonka is, I really, really like him, I have to say. He's the right mixture of kooky and serious and real, and then completely, like, of course, sometimes I look at him on set with his top hat and his frock coat, and I love the backstory, how Paul explained who he is and why he is. It's just so clever because we never really kind of knew that before, and now there's a whole kind of explanation, and the costume and his look kind of comes from that. So yeah, to me, it hasn't changed hugely through hair and makeup, hugely through costume. I would say Lindy created this very clever silhouette, which carries the character through, and I think it's very, very clever what she's done. And he is quite a magical character. My initial conversation with Paul, he did ask me what I thought we should do. Do you do it all in the post? Do it digitally? And I very strongly thought that we should do it practically, because I think everything is better if it's done practically and then maybe enhanced and tidied up afterwards in the post. And I think Paul, and now that I've seen the sets and everything we deal with is practical. Everything in our world is practical. And there's so much magic in that, I can't tell you. I've never seen anything more magical than, cartel flying through the air for real and then holding on to each other's foot and holding on to the top of the fountain. It's hilarious.
Being a fan of the Paddington movies, he has such a specific style. Like, you can just tell that it's a Paul King movie, and that especially getting to work with him now, I get it. Like, his eye for detail and his sense of timing and just the care. You could tell the care that was put in to both of those movies. I mean, to have the star of your film not even be there and be able to create such masterpieces is just. I mean, I think it's just it's an incredible, both incredible achievements. So I was really excited to hear that it was him, and because I knew he would just make this so magical and incredible. I can't say enough good things about him. I really, his work ethic and his care is just, it's unlike anyone I've worked with. I mean, he learned to tap dance for this. He went to the Performing Arts art school in New York, so he knew a little bit, but not a lot of the styles we did here. So he learned how to ballroom and like everything. He had to throw himself into everything for this movie, and his care about it. Like, he would just go over something over and over and over. He's like, I have to do it 5 times till I get it right. I have to do it 5 times till I get it right. And it was so inspiring to watch him work and the care that he took about it. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, I'll get it on the day, or oh, I'll, he really wants to be prepared so he can then act it as well. Because I always say it's not about, when I choreograph something, it's not necessarily about the steps, it's about having that be a base for the actor so they can then perform it and then let the character do it. So, and that's exactly what he did. I mean, he just, threw himself into these moves and the blocking just so much that then it's Willy Wonka doing it. One of my favorite things to do is give whatever project I'm on a whole scope of a language, just all of the different styles in the movie. A tap dance and a waltz and a big Broadway number and this montage. I'm really, really excited to see it all together. It has everything. It really does. Knowing what we've been a part of and knowing what we haven't been a part of. I mean, there are so many things I haven't seen yet or I don't have no idea what they look like. I mean, just what we've been a part of feels special and exciting. So I can't imagine what the rest of the movie is going to feel like. So I think there's a lot to love about this movie.
And he hadn't really done much singing before this project. And so I know for him, he was really keen to work hard at strengthening his voice, making sure that he was totally on top of the music. And we worked every day for 2 months, ensuring that he knew those songs inside out. And that enabled him then to really bring the character to the sound that he was making. And his voice has gone from strength to strength. He's added all the amazing acting ability that he has into the music, and it's just helped us so much to bring these songs to life. Paul is also really experienced in comedy and has lots of things in both camps, and to work on with such an inspiring writer and director who's just flooding the room with ideas all the time. And we instantly, I think, connected when talking about the music, talking about what Neil was bringing to the new music. It was just exciting to work with someone who's so engaged and excited about their work. Neil obviously comes from a pop background, but there's so many elements to Neil's music. There's folk, there's all the instrumentation is, almost like an orchestra in a lot of his Divine Comedy tracks. And he's a great storyteller through his lyrics. And so it lends itself so well to this world that Paul has created, and the Wonka world, because he was able to bring that world to life through the music that he was creating. Wonka's world is not normal and not what you expect. And I suppose that translates in the music, and instruments like the accordion and the banjo. The dulcimer in particular became a real instrument that helped us to create the sound that we were looking for. And Neil and Paul had quite a specific idea of what they wanted from the music. Tracks like Scrub Scrub was very early on considered to be almost like a Kurt Weill track, a song, as well as influences from cabaret like Kander and Ebb. So there were all these sounds that were developing along the way. And as soon as we got a real accordion player in the room, it really did change things.